Hello, I'm Andrew Robinson. I'm a member of the Friends Advisory Council at the British Museum, and I'm happy to be giving a talk here at home to members and supporters. I hope that you and your families and friends and loved ones are all keeping well at this uniquely difficult time throughout the world. I'm going to speak about the Indus civilization, lost and found. I'm the author of several books on Indian history and culture, including the Indus in the series Lost Civilizations and India, A Short History. Now, the Indus civilization centered around the valley of the Indus River and its tributaries in what is now Pakistan and northwest India, was, in its unique way, as extraordinary as the contemporaneous civilizations of Mesopotamia and Egypt. But it disappeared around 1800 BC and left no direct legacy in the Indian subcontinent. Neither Alexander the Great, who invaded India from the northwest in the 4th century BC, nor Ashoka, the great Buddhist-oriented emperor who ruled most of the Indian subcontinent in the 3rd century BC, were even dimly aware of the Indus civilization, nor were the Arab, Mughal and European colonial rulers of India. Indeed, the Indus civilization remained altogether invisible for more than 3 millennia, until it was rediscovered a century ago in 1921. Even today, it refuses to reveal many of its tantalizing secrets. The British Museum played a significant role in its rediscovery. In 1892, the museum received from a British Army officer in India a mysterious small black seal stone that had been discovered in the Indus region. The seal stone was engraved with a horned bull with an inscription in 6 unknown characters above it. The seal has a stone boss on the back with a hole in it, suggesting that the seal was kept on a cord, perhaps strung around the neck of the seal's owner, as a marker of personal identification. The first person to try and interpret the seal was another army officer, Alexander Cunningham, the inaugural Director General of the Archaeological Survey of India. In 1875, Cunningham commented, "They are certainly not Indian letters, and as the bull which accompanies them is without a hump, I conclude that the seal is foreign to India." A century and a half later, we are sure that this seal is native to the Indus region, but frustratingly, we cannot still read the letters engraved in the undeciphered Indus script. 2 further Indus seals appeared in the 1880s and were donated to the British Museum too. They had been discovered at Harappa, an ancient site beside a tributary of the Indus River. In 1912, the 3 seals were published together in the Journal of the Royal Asiatic Society. One of them provided the first sighting of what appeared to be a unicorn. The unicorn is now the commonest animal found on the Indus seals, though we are still not sure whether it depicts a real or a mythical animal. According to the ancient Greeks, unicorns came from India. This publication in 1912 caught the eye of John Marshall, a later Director General of the Archaeological Survey. In the early 1920s, after the end of the First World War, Marshall decided to excavate at Harappa and at another promising site, Mohenjo-Daro, located near the Indus River. In 1924, Marshall published an article about these excavations in the Illustrated London News. It begins with perhaps the most famous statement ever made about the Indus civilization. Not often has it been given to archaeologists as it was given to Heinrich Schliemann at Tiryns and Mycenae and to Aurel Stein in the deserts of Turkestan, to light upon the remains of a long-forgotten civilization. It looks, however, at this moment as if we are on the threshold of such a discovery in the plains of the Indus. Archaeologists have identified over 1,000 settlements belonging to the Indus civilization's mature phase, that is between 2600 and 1900 BC, of which less than 10% have been excavated. They cover at least 800,000 square kilometers of what in 1947 became Pakistan and India, an area approximately a quarter the size of Western Europe, with an original population of perhaps 1 million people. This was the most extensive urban culture of its time, about twice the size of its equivalent in Mesopotamia or Egypt. Most Indus settlements were villages, but some were towns, and at least 5 were substantial cities. The 2 largest cities, Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa, were comparable with cities like in Mesopotamia and Memphis in Egypt. Let's have a look at Mohenjo-Daro, which is now a UNESCO World Heritage Site. This photo from the early 1920s shows the site before excavations began. On the far left is the mound of a Buddhist stupa built in the early 1st millennium AD. Following the excavations, the stupa dominates the city beneath it, which is 2 millennia older than the stupa. You can see the stupa near the center of this aerial view of Mohenjo-Daro. The city's ancient population is estimated to have been 50,000 people. Also visible as a large rectangle to the right of the stupa is the Great Bath, probably the most striking building in Mohenjo-Daro. This is the earliest public water tank in the ancient world, with a brick floor at a maximum depth of 2.4 meters, made watertight by a thick layer of bitumen. But it is still not clear whether it had a religious as well as a hygienic purpose. We do not know for sure that the Indus people worshipped water, like the much later Hindu civilization. The Great Bath has no symbolic decorations of any kind. Undoubtedly, Indus people crafted their water supply and drainage to a very high standard, not bettered until the time of ancient Rome, 2 millennia after the Indus civilization. For example, there were some 700 wells at Mohenjo-Daro, 10 to 15 meters deep, which stand up like towers after their excavation in the 1920s. There is also an underground drain-cum-sewer beneath a corbelled brick arch. Many houses in Mohenjo-Daro boasted the first private toilets in the world. Water was also crucial for trade, via boats on the Indus and its tributaries, depicted here in the form of a seal stone and a terracotta amulet from Mohenjo-Daro. Some boats, powered by sails, traded across the Arabian Sea with faraway Mesopotamia, where Indus jewelry, weights, inscribed seals, and other objects have been excavated, dating back to around 2500 BC. The Mesopotamians called the Indus region Meluha, but much of the Indus trade was carried by land, using the humble bullock cart, depicted in this terracotta model from Harappa. Whether elephants transported goods is less clear. They are always depicted on Indus seal stones without human riders. Yet a terracotta elephant figurine from Harappa bears traces of coloured paint, red and white bands across its face. This decoration is reminiscent of the present-day Indian custom of painting the faces of elephants, especially for festivals and religious processions. So it is possible that Indus elephants were domesticated too. The Indus weight system used in trade does not correspond with any of the weight systems used in Mesopotamia or Egypt. It has left a remarkable legacy in India. It provided the weight standards for the earliest Indian coins issued in the 7th century BC, and it functions even today for weighing small quantities in traditional markets in both Pakistan and India. The smallest Indus weight, 0.871 grams, was probably based on a tiny black and red seed from a creeper known as the ratti. It equals the weight of 8 ratti, which are still used by jewelers in Pakistan and India. Indus jewelry is most famous for its long, finely drilled carnelian beads up to 13 centimeters in length. These 36 carnelian beads with bronze spacer beads were probably the hereditary ornaments of a woman or her family hidden away for safekeeping. Modern archaeologists have tried to reproduce the drilling technique using a cylindrical drill bit almost as hard as diamond, many of which have survived at Indus sites. They estimate that 480 working days would have been required to make this belt of 36 drilled beads, from the initial heating of the carnelian to its final polishing. No wonder that such long carnelian beads were part of the treasures found at the royal cemetery at Ur in Mesopotamia, either imported from the Indus region via boat or created in Mesopotamia using Indus drilling technology. The wearing of carnelian beads must have been a sign of high status and wealth. Bangles, by contrast, were an ornament common to all sections of society and seem to have been important. They are often found in Indus burials. Amazingly, Indus bronze saws must have been as hard as steel, since they were capable of cutting shell bangles as efficiently as modern steel saws. Very likely, the Indus tradition of wearing bangles was one that persisted in South Asia. Indian warriors, for example, wore bangles in battle to protect the wrist and the arm. Indian women wore them to protect their families and ensure long lives for their husbands. This female custom continues today. But interesting to observe, an equally high technical standard was not applied to weaponry. The metal blades in this spear point from Mohenjo-daro and this dagger from Harappa were not strengthened by the midrib required for military effectiveness, so they were presumably not used for warfare. Indeed, most surprisingly, the Indus civilization offers no definitive evidence for warfare. No metal weapons and armor, no warriors, and no defensive fortifications, a situation without parallel in war-addicted ancient Mesopotamia, Egypt, and China. These skeletons found in the upper levels of Mohenjo-daro were once thought by archaeologists to be victims of war, massacred by alien invaders of the Indus region. But according to studies of their bones made in the 1980s, they died in many cases from malaria and probably other diseases such as cholera, perhaps spread by contamination of the city's drinking water. This absence of Indus warfare brings us to the fascinating question of how the apparently peaceful and productive Indus civilization was governed, which is largely a mystery. No grand palaces, no monumental temples, no great rulers, no imposing statues, and no royal graves have been discovered in the Indus, unlike in Mesopotamia and Egypt. Only a mysterious and sophisticated statuette dug up in Mohenjo-daro in the mid-1920s. Made of steatite and a mere 17.5 centimeters in height and 11 centimeters wide, it has become known as the Priest King, though we actually have no idea of its identity. The Priest King is so called largely on the strength of his commanding face, with his half-closed eyes and closely manicured beard, and the elaborate draped garment he wears, leaving his right shoulder bare, a style that is still considered appropriate in India and the Buddhist world when approaching a shrine or holy person. In addition, the emphatic trefoil designs on his garment parallel the trefoils on cloaks worn by gods and priest kings in Mesopotamia. If the statuette really does depict a priest, what kind of religion did he and his people espouse? Because the Indus script cannot be read, a clear answer to this question is impossible. John Marshall thought the Indus religion might have influenced key aspects of the much later religion of Hinduism. He looked at one seal image from Mohenjo-daro and dubbed it, quote, a prototype of the historic Shiva. The yogic posture, the ithiphallicism, the three faces, the three-pointed headdress, and the four beasts around the head of this figure are certainly reminiscent of the Hindu god Shiva. But none of these resemblances is entirely convincing. For example, it makes more sense to imagine the deity as having four faces, one of them looking backwards and therefore hidden, with each face matching one of the four animals. Moreover, the four beasts are wild animals, with the possible exception of the water buffalo. Yet the historic Shiva did not protect wild animals. What a pity we can't read the seal's signs, which probably write the name of the deity. Another Indus link with Hinduism is this small object made from terracotta. It strongly resembles a present-day Shiva lingam, the sacred phallic object used in Shiva worship. But this may be purely a coincidence, rather than evidence for the Indus roots of Hinduism. Then there are the clay-lined pits, found at some Indus sites containing ash, charcoal, and terracotta objects, such as a ladle with smoke marks. Are these pits sacrificial hearths or fire altars? Quite possibly they are, but there is no certainty, and even if they are, there is no evidence at all that they were used for fire sacrifices similar to those specified in early Hindu rituals mentioned in the Vedic scriptures. Yet another Indus premonition of Hinduism might be the swastika symbol. The name swastika comes from the Sanskrit word for well-being, although the swastika is first seen outside the Indian subcontinent as early as 10,000 BC. In the Indus civilization, the swastika occurs often on seals and inscriptions, both in its left-facing and its right-facing Nazi variant, sometimes even side by side on the same tablet, as in this tablet from Harappa. Its Indus meaning is unknown. Possibly the variants stood for different cults or philosophical schools. Certainly in Hinduism and Buddhism, the two variants represented the opposing forces of the universe. Today in the Indian subcontinent, the swastika is very widely used as a decoration, for example on buildings and the human body, as a symbol for wealth and good fortune, both in secular life and religious rituals. But we have no definite proof that the symbol was inherited from the Indus civilization. One Hindu custom that surely originates in the Indus civilization is the female habit of applying vermilion paste to the middle parting of the hair, so as to symbolize marriage. It appears in Indus female figurines. There are actually more Indus female figurines than male figurines, which suggests women's importance. But scholars have hardly any idea of the true role of Indus women. Many female figurines from Harappa are heavily decorated. Some of their decorations can be correlated with actual ornaments, belts, necklaces, bangles, and other objects discovered by archaeologists. Some of the figurines were apparently deities, although we have no idea of their precise religious significance. This moulded tablet from Harappa shows a female deity above an elephant, battling two figures beneath an Indus sign showing a wheel. And this cylinder seal from another site shows two female deities with the body of a tiger and the horns of a goat observing a fight over a woman between two men armed with spears. This is the only definitive scene of fighting in the entire corpus of Indus art. The most remarkable female portrait is almost as enigmatic as the male priest-king. This vivacious, naked, bronze statuette confronts the viewer with her left arm sheathed in bangles and her almost bare right arm held akimbo. Almost inevitably, she has been dubbed a dancing girl, a forerunner of the Nautch girls found in Indian society. But there is no certainty that she is standing in a dance posture. Let's finish with the greatest Indus mystery of all. What caused the decline and disappearance of the civilization? In trying to explain the decline and fall of civilizations, it seems that we have a deep-seated need to assume they're caused by human agency, which generally translates into a story of internal degeneracy, falling prey to external invasion, such as the decline and fall of the Roman Empire under the onslaught of barbarian outsiders. In the Indus case, archaeologists for some decades assumed that an armed invasion of the Indus area by fierce nomadic Aryans from the northwest was the chief culprit. Only in the 1970s was this explanation seriously questioned as a consequence of new radiocarbon dates for the decline of the Indus cities, plus reinvestigation of the supposed archaeological evidence for an invasion, plus convincing textual arguments against an attack on the Indus cities derived from nuanced studies of the Vedic scriptures. Today, the idea of a concentrated Aryan invasion of the Indus civilization has been wholly rejected by scholars, although not the more flexible concept of several Indo-Aryan speaking migrations into the Indus area from Central Asia. More likely is some kind of environmental explanation for Indus decline. Destructive climate change has been largely ruled out, but natural hazards are surely a possibility. They could have included major changes in the course of the Indus River and its tributaries, triggered by Himalayan tectonic activity, and even earthquakes in the seismically active Indus region. These could have caused prolonged flooding and salination of the fields used for crops, as happened in Pakistan in 2010, especially around Mohenjo-Daro. Most probable is that the Indus decline was the outcome of a combination of factors. Hydrological changes, floods and diseases might have played a part. So might deforestation, caused by brick-making and copper smelting. So too might an increasing rejection of central authority, possibly due to migrations of foreigners from the northwest. In addition, perhaps we should consider some inherent political weakness related to the civilization's apparent absence of rulers and military force. According to one recent influential Indus scholar, writing in a provocative mode, the Indus ideology ultimately had feet of clay. In the end, their ideology made the Indus peoples who they were, but it may have proved to be their undoing as well. If only scholars could learn to read the Indus script. For example, the two signs on this compelling little seal accompanying a rhinoceros, an animal no longer found in the Indus region. No wonder these children at the Lahore Museum in Pakistan are engrossed while making their own Indus seal impressions. For now, though, the Indus civilization is certainly far from being lost, as it was only a century ago. Its half-understood mysteries will certainly fascinate anyone interested in the origins of civilization. Personally, I am drawn to its apparent success in combining artistic excellence, technological sophistication, and economic vigor with social egalitarianism, political freedom, and religious moderation. If further Indus investigations were to show this attractive picture to be historically accurate, it would perhaps be a hopeful sign for the future of humankind.